Welcome to OverDrive on TSN 1050, the TSN app, and up on TSN 4. Mark Rowe once again in for Brian Hayes alongside Dave Feschuk from the Toronto Star, and from the beautiful Corrado Studios, it's the one and only Frankie Corrado.
What's happening, buddy? You're still working after those comments today about Tiger Woods? What's going on?
I cannot confirm or deny that I said anything about Tiger Woods using painkillers. But
I can neither confirm or deny that.
But it's so there is an English golfer named Mark Rowe, spelled the exact same way, and he was a European Tour player. I don't even know if he played on the PGA Tour at all, but his claim to fame is he was in contention at the Open Championship about 20 years ago, and he screwed up his scorecard and got disqualified. So everyone knew who he was. He has since become a broadcaster, and anytime, like, it's not to say I don't get negative comments on social media, but when they're really strongly worded and it's around a golf tournament, I'm 90% confident that it's another Mark Rowe, which is the case today.
Right.
Where Mark Rowe on the British broadcast was talking about Tiger Woods and some painkillers. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this Mark Rowe is taking strays.
Unfortunately, but you know what? Like, it's one of those things where you kind of know there's things you can and can't say as a broadcaster, whether you think it. You can't say something like that. You can't say that. Look at this guy's eyes, like he's on painkillers. We all kind of know the deal. Like, the Tiger needs to do, like, he's got a certain routine that he needs to do in order to play and get through these rounds. And it obviously didn't go very well for him today. But I don't know. You probably could leave those details out.
Yeah, probably. It was one of those things where it doesn't need to be mentioned, and it's assumed that he is doing everything physically possible to play these tournaments. And as we saw today, it still wasn't nearly good enough because Tiger Woods will take quite the feat tomorrow to make the cut, to put it lightly.
Speaking of like dumb comments, I heard one today, and I would love to get your guys' opinion on this. Mark, you're a young father. Dave, you obviously have a son who's playing golf and very successful at that. I was going for a walk, just walking my dog, and there's like a soccer camp happening in the park here, and it's been happening every day, but I never really walked past it. Like, I've been walking around it. Today I walked right by it, so the parents are there, the instructors, the kids. Like, it's a pretty big commotion, and they're doing this drill, and I can hear it in, when I'm walking by, and the instructor goes, "Okay, Marco, try not to screw it up this time." And I was like, oh man, Marco's not having a good day. But I also, I was like, I don't know if you want to lead with, let's not screw it up this time. Maybe there's a different way you could approach that one, instructor guy.
How old were these kids, Frankie?
Like 7 or 8.
Boy.
Yeah, like they were young. So yeah, it was. I hope he didn't screw it up anymore. I felt bad for the kid.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything that bad. I'm around a bunch of baseball diamonds, so I've seen the father just hammering ground balls at his son, and his son clearly wanting to do anything but that. And the encouragement there was, I would say, constructive criticism, to put it lightly, and it was like a 9-year-old. So I always wonder, that's not going to be me, right? Like, no. Everyone,
yeah.
No one is like, I'm going to be that guy in 15 years. You just suddenly, I guess, maybe become it in a way.
Yeah, look, I mean, Frankie, I'm with you on that. That is like textbook bad coaching, especially, forget for kids. It's bad coaching for adults. Like, Frankie, you played pro sports. You had some bad coaches in pro sports who were very negative. I can think of one in particular that was a particular negative person who wasn't Mr. Positivity. But, man, I mean, you would like to think that, people trusted with coaching, young, moldable minds would be careful about that stuff. And yet, having lived it myself, and I've made stupid mistakes like that as a coach in youth sports. Hopefully not that stupid, but I've seen way dumber. I've seen way uglier. I've seen way crueler. Heck, my kid played in the GTHL, Frankie. Like, you know what goes on there.
I know exactly what goes on there. It's a crazy world. Once you get inside those arenas like Westwood, Chesswood, Downsview, you get in there and those games get going. It's like it's the wild, wild west. But it's funny, like if you relate it to golf, it's like you hit a bad shot and, you know, parent or dad would ask you, well, why would you do that? Yeah, I meant to do that. Like, I meant to put it in the trap, 20 yards left of the green. So,
yeah, and I've seen that at junior golf. I've seen dads and moms at junior golf, mad at their kid for hitting a bad golf shot. And you're thinking to yourself, hang on here. Like,
have you played this game?
Have you played this game? Have you seen the best players in the world play this game and hit bad shots all the time?
My buddy Javier, I used to play like junior golf with this guy. We played those CJGA tournaments as kids and stuff, and his dad had the best advice for him. You cannot go wrong with this. He would say, Javier, it's a simple game, buddy. You put the ball on the fairway, you put the ball on the green, you take your 2 putts, and you go to the next hole. And I don't know why we can't all just follow that, because it seems pretty simple when you put it that way.
Yeah, both of you. Thanks, Javier's dad. Yeah. Like, Captain Obvious speaking right now. Like, come on.
But
man.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
He simplified it. That's all you need to do.
If it was only that easy.
Yeah.
It was hard for the guys today, though. I'll tell you what, man, with that wind. And you know what? Like, you can account for the wind. You can account for, spraying it into the fescue. That's always going to be an issue. Some of the stuff we saw on the greens today, I'm not sure we were expecting that. Like, Bryson DeChambeau was 3-putting all over the place. Nick Taylor had one of the best ball striking rounds, that he could have, and he couldn't make a putt. Like, it was odd that it was the greens that were causing a lot of problems for these guys today.
Well, and let's get to Nick Taylor, because he gave us one of the sound bites of the day. And as Frankie pointed out, everything up until getting to the green wasn't the issue. It was his putter. And this is what he had planned to do after the round.
Cool. What's the rest of the day look like? You gonna get some work in or mainly rest?
I don't know. I might throw my putter in the ocean or go work for 3 hours.
And which one did he do? I guess we'll find out tomorrow when he returns to the course.
Can't we all relate to that? Like, haven't we all had that round where you're walking off the green on 18, you probably 3-jacked it 9 times, and you say to yourself, I could go home, I could wrap this thing around my leg, or I could actually go to the putting green and work on things. I don't know what you guys choose to do, but I think I'm usually cutting my losses that day, and I'm done. I've played enough throughout the round.
Yeah, like Nick, and that's not exactly the putter flip Nick Taylor had in mind today.
I know.
Right? Like the man famous for the 72-footer over at Oakdale a couple of years ago is suddenly struggling. I'm looking at the stats here. Like, it wasn't just Nick Taylor that was struggling on the greens, guys. Like, he lost 3 strokes to the field, 3 strokes gained to the field. So on the greens, which is bad, considering he was only 4 over.
Yeah.
So 3 of those 4 over were essentially putts. Adam Hadwin, who's a really good putter, he's dead last in putting out there. He really struggled. He also finished at 4 over. He lost 3 strokes to the field on the putting green. Tiger Woods, one of the greatest putters of all time. What do you have? A handful of 3 putts,
+8.
It's not exactly. It was not uncommon. For people to struggle.
Taylor had 9 looks for birdie inside 21 feet today. Like, that's on the PGA Tour. If you're getting 9 looks inside 21 feet, you're having a pretty productive round. Like, you got to be thinking you're making quite a few of those. It was weird. It's just one of those days where you can account for certain things at the Open Championship. Those things are coming, but the putting was an issue for a lot of these guys. And then if you take a look at the leaderboard, the top 10 names, 6 of those guys are European guys. And there's a Canadian in there as well, as Mackenzie Hughes is, I believe, -2. So it really going to show that the players that have kind of played on these types of tracks, these kinds of conditions, had an advantage on day one anyways.
Yeah, Mackenzie Hughes birdied 18, so he's tied for 4th at the moment, 2 under, 3 back of Shane Lowry, who's your clubhouse leader at the moment after shooting a 66. Daniel Brown is in 2nd at -4. He's still on the course, and we can still watch this on TSN at the moment, even though it is currently 9:09 in Scotland at the moment, but at the time of the year, there's still enough sun. And many of the questions going in was, how would the Canadians do? How would Tiger Woods do? So we've addressed that. How would Rory McIlroy do? And this is his first major after the collapse at the U.S. Open. He was good at the Scottish Open last week. He shot a 7 over, guys, today. And it's tough to know how much is it the mental shrapnel from what happened at the U.S. Open, or he just didn't have the game for how the course was playing today. Rex Hoggard from the Golf Channel is going to join us in about 20 minutes. We'll get his thoughts on that. But Frankie, I'll start with you. It was tough to watch. Like, I think we all kind of live and die almost at the moment with Rory McIlroy, where many golf fans kind of feel for him. Whether it's the drought, whether it's what happened at the U.S. Open, a lot of people just cheering him on. And when he has a day like today, it's pretty gut-wrenching.
It got ugly for him. And, coming off the Scottish Open, I thought that would have been the perfect kind of platform for him, where he kind of eased into things. He played well. He had a top 5 finish. And that's not really the issue for Rory. Like, that hasn't been the issue. It's been converting in these big tournaments, these major tournaments. Like, he has been sniffing around it. But for him to go out and do what he did today, where, it felt like it was slow, like so close for him, but so far, it could have swayed a couple times. It didn't, and it just kind of kept cascading, and it got worse and worse as the day went on. And that's like, I do feel bad for Rory in a sense that it has been gut-wrenching what happened to him at the U.S. Open, but this has been not a great tournament for him. So it's and he's in there with a category of a lot of guys that didn't have great opening rounds.
Yeah, and maybe it's just coming off the high. For DeChambeau, he struggled today as well. He's coming off the high, winning U.S. Open. McIlroy's coming off the low of losing a U.S. Open. Like, those are extreme emotions, guys. And I think sometimes, we underestimate how long it takes to recover from both those aspects of being a great golfer. Like the highs of winning, you see a lot of guys tank after they win something big, like DeChambeau won. And you see a lot of guys have a hard time recovering from big, big disappointments. Although Rory, to his credit, has a history of turning things around after big disappointments, right. So
yeah, and Bryson, like, he played last week as well on Live. Like, they were at Valderrama, which is not exactly the same, type of course that these guys are playing, but he played last week, so it's not like he should be rusty. But it was funny listening to Bryson talk about his round after. I don't know if you guys caught that, but basically he was just saying, it's an equipment thing. My swing's fine. I was, it's just the compression of the ball. Yeah, it was the compression of the ball. I'm swinging at 190, but he goes, I just wasn't really prepared for what the conditions were going to be like out here. Newsflash, man, it's the Open. Like, it's, exactly what the conditions are going to be like. They're going to be erratic. It's going to be windy. It's going to be tough to fly the ball, certain ways that maybe you might want to. Like, he was talking about how he was trying to hit the draw. He was trying to go right to left all day, and then he admits, he's like, I probably should have cut the ball. Like, at what point during your round do you consider saying, maybe I got to change something? So I don't know. I can understand his willingness to say that it is the equipment and his swing is so robotic and it doesn't change, but you do have to make a lot of changes and adapt to the conditions in this type of tournament. And you know what? DeChambeau is such an interesting character, Frankie. You talk about, I do think there are equipment issues with him a lot of the times because he's using equipment that nobody else has. These 3D printed iron faces and these crank drivers that, we saw him change his driver out moments before the final round of the U.S. Open. And on top of all that, I don't know if you guys have seen that, the journalism that's been done around him and his former longtime coach, Mike Schy. They've had a big falling out, which has to be tumultuous, unless you're, a completely soulless person. This guy who spent more time with a young Bryson than probably anybody but his parents, kind of teaching him and helping him get to where he got to, being one of the best amateurs in the world and obviously now one of the best pro golfers on the planet. They've had this really ugly falling out where Bryson has accused his former coach of essentially extorting him for a couple of $1 million. And, oh, wow.
And if you read the story, the coach is saying, I'm not extorting him at all. I was asking him for some money to run a junior tournament in the area of California in which Bryson grew up. And it just got really ugly fast, and there just seems to be, a disconnect there, and you wonder how much that's affecting the guy too, because it seems like it has to affect you unless you're just completely cold.
Well, I'm sure it would, and just like when Rory had to carry the weight of the PGA Tour for such a long period of time, when Liv broke off and started doing their thing, like that wore on Rory McIlroy, and maybe he's still feeling the effects of that. And like there's another name that was so dominant in our game for quite a while, and that's John Rahm, who shoots a 2-over round today, and I can't imagine, coming into this year thinking it was going to be such a quiet year for John Rahm. The only thing really, like, he goes to Liv, so you think, okay, he's taken himself out of the mix when it comes to the competitive edge and spirit that maybe he normally would have. He's going to play less, which, I don't know, maybe is a little bit different for him, but he hasn't fared well at the majors. And, it's a 2-over round for him today where, we're not even thinking about John Rahm coming into these tournaments. Like he's not on the radar. It's Scotty, it's Rory, and then it's kind of everyone else. And I think, you don't have to go back that far to have John Rahm right there in those conversations with those two guys.
Hey, man, it wasn't that long ago when we were sitting here saying this guy was the best player on the planet.
Yeah.
Like, before the rise of Sheffler, he was, and then he took the money, and things have changed since. And yeah, no, sometimes I think we underestimate how the off the course stuff can affect a guy. And, whether it was taking the several $100 million John Rahm took and the life change that brought, who knows what that does to a guy. But you're right. Like, you go from being like this guy with an aura around you who seems like he just cannot miss to suddenly being a guy who's out there searching, just like every other journeyman pro. And that's where John Rahm finds himself right now.
Yeah, and the other thing with Rahm is he's always been very fiery, right? Like, we've seen him kind of wear that emotion. Like, now that he doesn't really have to fight for it, as much on a day-to-day, I wonder if that fiery edge has maybe fallen by the wayside a little bit. Like, you get the money, you feel that sense of relief, like everything's kind of taken care of for you. He's going to show up to all 4 majors because he's there and he's kind of got the exemptions. And now it's like, that whatever was driving you, that fire that was driving you, you don't have to have it anymore. So, like, it changes your mental state. And that was a big part of John Rahm's game, right or wrong. The emotion behind it, the passion in the way he played was part of what drove him.
Yeah. We'll get into the Open Championship a little more with Rex Hoggard, who's going to join us at 4:30. I do want to get your thoughts on some of the stuff that did happen last night in this. We call it a dead period, but it's essentially just it's baseball taking the break. And a couple of storylines, stepped up, and we saw a 14-year-old play an MLS match yesterday, youngest player in not just the league's history, but also North American sports, but also Caitlyn Clark. And in the wake of this new TV deal that's worth more than $2 billion for the WNBA, here she comes with more fanfare than, I don't know, I can't think of the last player who had it. She sets the league record with 19 assists yesterday in a loss to Dallas. But it's interesting that, A, she's going to be in the All-Star game against the Olympic team, which some people believed she could have been on.
Oh, you think?
And you wonder if they were making that team today compared to it was about a month ago that they were, and she's obviously taken her game to another level since then, or at least adapted to the NBA a little bit better. Dave, it's so impressive that she's been able to make that transition where there really is no offseason from college to the WNBA and to play this well. And she was, everyone kept using the Steph Curry comparisons in college because she would hit those logo threes. And she was, it's not to say she's not a scorer in the WNBA, but she's the best distributor on her team. And, and just to be able to do that this early in her career, it's pretty remarkable.
Oh, I mean, she should, to get to the point you just made, it's laughable that she's not going to Paris.
It's disappointing as a fan. I'm not going to sit here and say that I know the roster better than the coaching staff for the U.S.
Well, they're sending over 40-plus-year-old Diana Taurasi. Right. I mean, let's change the guard here. I think Diana Taurasi is going to be okay if she doesn't go to another Olympics, and I don't know how many she's been to, probably 4 or 5. But for Caitlyn Clark, I watched that game or a lot of it. She's electric. Yeah. Like, she is so much fun to watch. Not only because that at any moment she can pull up and bang a Steph Curry-esque 3 from very, very deep. she hasn't been doing that quite as much in the WNBA, and I think some of that's just been fatigue. Like this is a brutal, grueling schedule they've put these women through. Very tough schedule, and they get a break now thanks to the Olympics. So maybe she needs the break, and maybe it's a blessing in disguise. But man, you talk about how she's known for one thing, which is shooting these incredibly, compelling bombs, and yet she's at her best when she's doing a completely different thing. And that is passing the basketball, Frankie. And I'm telling you, man, she is. To watch people, to watch a woman play, to watch a human being play, and have that understanding of the other four players on the floor. It's not something you can teach, Frankie. It's not something a coach can coach. It doesn't come with positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement. It's a natural gift, and she's got it.
I guess I just have a hard time understanding why she wouldn't be on that team. Like every time you turn on the TV, and if it's SportsCenter here in Canada or it's NBA Today and they're talking about the WNBA, it's Caitlyn Clark. Like she takes all the headlines. Everyone's coming at her. Angel Reese wants to come at her. Like it's Caitlyn Clark drives all these headlines, and it's not just because she's some like new toy on the block, for lack of a better term. It's like, no, she actually has a lot of game, and she's showing it. And to your point, Dave, like the grind has been there for her, and it's not just the grind of playing, it's the grind of the physicality that everyone has to go up against her with. Like she's had to deal with a lot of that, and she's handled it so well, so gracefully. And I don't understand how you can have a team going to the Olympics and you don't have that player, because anytime there's a WNBA highlight, chances are it's Caitlyn Clark who's leading the way.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
How do you see it, Mark?
Well, first off, I'm shocked that like NBC isn't stepping in and telling USA Basketball she's on the team.
Yeah,
like, we know what kind of power they have when it comes to the Olympics.
If Nike can keep Jaylen Brown off the men's team,
right,
you'd think somebody could get her on the women's team.
But if she is the future of this sport and the future of the game in the States, who in 4 years might be the best player on the American team and might be their leader, isn't it valuable just to bring her? And even if she is on the bench, because people keep saying, well, you can't have her on the bench. She's not going to have a role. Well, why not?
Yeah.
Like, at least
it's
there.
a great point.
And it's an experience for her to see that, the Americans are overwhelming favorites, and it would be shocking if they don't win a gold medal. But she goes over and sees, okay, FIBA basketball at the Olympics is a little different than college and WNBA, and I know she's represented the States before, so she understands the rules, but it's a different animal. And
you know what it is, Mark? It's when it comes down to it, if she were to go this time around, and let's say she had a limited role, the next 4-year cycle, she goes there and she can say, last time we did this, it worked, it didn't work, this time we're going to do that. It's having the boots on the ground, being able to have your fingerprints on the team, and almost, being able to take ownership. Because if she goes there and it's a limited role, she may not have ownership of that team. That's fine. She's part of it. She's a passenger. She'll play whatever she's going to play. She's going to learn from it. But you better believe the next time around, it's her show. And she knows the difference between now and then, and how things are going to work and how she's going to mold that team. And you better believe she's going to be the one kind of leading the charge in 4 years' time when they're back there.
100%, Frankie. And the thing about her that I think those who don't watch her regularly don't understand, but maybe they understand because she just set the single game assist record for the entire league, and she's leading the league in assists. But, it is her vision that is her greatest gift. And the shooting is amazing, and she's a great shooter, and she's among the best shooters in the WNBA already. But it is her ability to find her teammates. And my point that I think is the most salient point of all this is, like, when you play at that level, you're going as essentially an all-star team. You're going to have limited practice before Paris. You're going to get together. You're going to try and win a gold medal on the fly. These 12 players that the U.S. is going to put over there. Like, if you're an all-star player, who do you want to play with above all? You want to play with somebody that'll get you the ball.
Yeah.
And right. Caitlyn Clark, she's not. She can be a gunner. She can just be a ball hog that just fires it up at will. But when she's playing with other great players, she will find them all. Like, she sees it. She sees everything. And I don't understand why, if you're the best players in the world, like, why wouldn't you want the best passer in the game on your team. It makes no sense.
And realistically, it's probably not going to hurt them not having her on the team because they're going to be very good. They have a lot of good players. I'm sure they're the favorites by large margin. But it's the fact of the matter is it's wrong not having her there because of, what she can do and the experience she can get. And, just, like you talk about, the distributor for sure. But every time there's a WNBA headline, every time there's news, Caitlyn Clark is centered around it, and every single time she's being shown in a very positive light, whether it's, the physicality that she's had to deal with on the court or the highlight reel stuff that she does on a night-to-night basis. So it is a mistake, but it's probably not going to hurt them in the long run.
If the original Dream Team can bring Christian Laettner to the Olympics, the current women's team can bring Caitlyn Clark. Come on.
I mean, I was trying to make the basketball argument, which is what they've used to keep her off the team, right? They've used the basketball argument, but Frankie's right. It just comes down to this. She's the most popular women's basketball player on the planet.
Yeah.
And she's becoming one of the most popular athletes, period, on the planet. And it's just asinine that you wouldn't put her in the Olympics.
So that was one of the big stories last night. Obviously ongoing at the moment at Royal Troon is the Open Championship. Rex Hoggard's going to join us after the break with more on that. Plus, Scott Dixon is in town for the Honda Indy. He has won that race 4 times, including back in 2022. So he's going to join us at 5:30. Diana Rossini, NFL reporter for The Athletic, will join us at 6:05. We got a jam-packed show as OverDrive continues on TSN 1050, the TSN app, and on TSN 4. OverDrive continuing on TSN 1050, the TSN app, and up on TSN 4. Mark Rowe in for Brian Hayes alongside Dave Feschuk and Frankie Corrado. And the Open Championship is underway. The first round is winding down. At the moment, Shane Lowry is in a tie for the lead with Daniel Brown at 5 under. Canadian Mackenzie Hughes is tied for 4th at 2 under. Tiger Woods, not a great day, 8 over. Rory McIlroy, 7 over. And with more from Royal Troon, we're joined by the Golf Channel's reporter and podcast host, Rex Hoggard. Rex, great to catch up with you. We were playing the Nick Taylor clip earlier about throwing his putter into the ocean and just his frustration with his game. And whether it's putting or keeping the ball in play, I think that his frustrations are probably shared with a lot of players today.
Yeah, I don't know if this is specific to Nick, to be honest with you. I understand his frustrations, and any player that's ever played this game can understand that. But it was a byproduct more of that golf course and those conditions today. And not only was it difficult, and I think the early wave probably got the worst of it, but players didn't see this coming. I mean, they didn't have a chance to practice in these winds. They didn't have a chance to practice with the golf course playing the way it did. And you saw a lot of frustration. You saw a lot of guys who probably wanted to throw their putter in the ocean. So I understand where Nick was coming from.
Yeah, was this something like we saw this a lot? Bryson DeChambeau didn't putt very well. Nick Taylor didn't putt very well. Like, you go down the list, there's a lot of guys that struggled on the greens. You can account for the wind. Like, it's going to be windy. You're going to have to deal with some fescue if you miss the fairway. Did everyone account for the greens being this difficult, for the putting being this hard?
I don't think everyone did. Probably the best lesson in here is Shane Lowry, one of the co-leaders. He made a scouting trip up here 2 weeks ago, played a couple rounds, because he wanted specifically to get the pace of the greens. He said, coming from the United States, and a lot of players who come from the PGA Tour will say this, they struggle with the pace of these greens. They're sometimes 2.5 feet slower than what you'll find at your average tour event, let alone a major championship. And that takes a little time. Now, some players will play last week's Scottish Open, try to get acclimated a little bit there. But for Shane, he said he came over here, played a couple practice rounds, and said he immediately felt comfortable on the greens, and I don't think it's any surprise he putted well today.
So, Rex, obviously, a lot of eyes were on Rory McIlroy and how he would bounce back, for lack of a better term, off his massive disappointment at the U.S. Open. It did not go well for Rory. A 78, 7 over, double bogeys, the postage stamp, double bogeys, the difficult 11th, putting one onto the railroad tracks. What did you make of Rory's struggles out there today?
It's funny, we did a punch shot on golfchannel.com, and I picked Rory as my biggest disappointment. And the reason behind that was I went back to what happened over those last couple holes, you alluded to it, at the U.S. Open, the disappointment and the pressure that comes with that. Because, hey, look, let's face it, every major that goes by is one less major he has the opportunity to finally get off that snot. It's been over a decade now. No one has to remind Rory of that. And I thought it was going to play out because of the way he's been hitting the ball and the way he's been playing. he would give himself an opportunity. I didn't expect this. I didn't expect a complete meltdown. And you're right. He looked uncomfortable. He made mistakes. I think some of this is the conditions. He played in the worst of it. But that's the worst ball striking round of the year for him by far.
How do you explain it? Is it the pressure? Because I feel like if it is the pressure, it's just never going to stop for Rory. As the majors pile up, there's going to be more pressure for him to win. As he goes back to the Open Championship, there's going to be more pressure for him to win. Like, I don't know when Rory gets a reprieve from the pressure. So how does he kind of get over that?
When he wins. I mean, that's when he gets a reprieve from it. That's the only way he can get a reprieve from it. But I have a hard time saying today was pressure, only because you don't win a major championship on a Thursday, and certainly he's put himself in a position in the past where he's had to climb himself out of holes like he's done now on a Thursday. I don't think that was it at all. I think the conditions were bad, and he probably started pressing and probably started being aggressive on a golf course and those conditions that you just couldn't be aggressive on.
Rex Hoggard from the Golf Channel joining us on OverDrive. And it's kind of typical that at the Open Championship, you would see 6 of the top 10 players be European. You have 3 Americans and 1 Canadian. We've been focused a lot on Mackenzie Hughes having a pretty solid day at 2 under. Of the Canadian contingent, was he one of the guys that you were targeting to have a positive week here at Royal Troon?
He probably wasn't on the radar, but I'm not going to say I'm surprised because, I mean, you guys know Mac's game as well as I do, but his game is based on his ball strike, and he hits the center of the club face more times than not, and I think that was important on a day like today, where if you were off just a little bit, and we saw it from some of the game's top players, as you pointed out, who struggled today, they were off. You look what Bryson DeChambeau did. This is someone who dismantled the golf course at Pinehurst and could barely keep it on the planet today. Mackenzie Hughes is a really good ball striker, and that was a good attribute today.
So, Rex, Tiger Woods had a nice start. He was 1 under through 3, and then it didn't go so well from there to the clubhouse, finishing with a 8 over par 79. Did you expect anything better from Tiger, given the state of his game?
No, because, again, you kind of look at his recent body of work. I mean, just to be quite frank here, and I'm not one of the ones, I'm not Colin Montgomery, who thinks he shouldn't be playing in this event. I think he should play as long as he wants because I think it's good for golf when he's around. However, he hasn't broken par this year on the PGA Tour. He's made just 1 cut. His starts are limited because of what we all know about what he can do physically now and the limitations that have been caused by multiple surgeries. I think that's part of it. He's going to be rusty and he can't play his way out of it. The other part of it is those were about the worst case scenario conditions-wise. Cold, wet conditions are not good for someone who's had multiple back surgeries. And I think we're going to see this as the norm in his career. If he can get on a golf course that's flat, like this one, but play it in semi-warm conditions and not a lot of breeze, I can see him catching lightning in a bottle and finding himself back in the hunt. But when it's like this, I just don't see how he pulls himself up.
Can John Rahm pull himself out here? Because it hasn't been a great major season for him. He doesn't play in the U.S. Open, but, first round of the Masters, he shoots 73, finishes tied for 45th. PGA, he shoots 70 in the first round. He misses the cut there. Now he's 2 over on day 1 of the Open Championship. What are you seeing and what are you hearing about John Rahm's game?
2 over was not a bad score today. So, yes, I think he 100% can pull himself up and find a way to get himself into contention going into the weekend. I'm doubtful of that, simply based on what he's done in the majors this year. This was going to be a litmus test for him because once he went to LIV Golf, the idea was, it's not going to prepare him for the majors the way he wants to prepare. And a lot of people sort of dismissed that idea. But we are now, 3 majors in 1 round in, and as you just pointed out, his record. I think this was going to be a telling week on a lot of levels. Either he was going to turn it around and prove that, yes, I can still compete in the major championships, or now I think the questions are legitimate. You have now gone through an entire season, and you simply didn't get it done. You have to look at where you play as a factor.
Rex Hoggard from the Golf Channel joining us on OverDrive, and I guess we should probably bring up the world's #1 player in Scotty Sheffler. Maybe we should start leading with him because he was solid today, 1 under, just finished his round. He went into the first 3 majors as the overwhelming favorite. Did you see him coming in, forget the odds, as a favorite as much as we were looking at him at the U.S. Open, PGA, and the Masters?
Full disclosure, I picked him to win. I know that's not a stretch. As you pointed out, he was the clear favorite. I went straight chalk, and for a lot of different reasons. Probably the biggest one is if you go back to 2016, the last time this championship was played at Royal Troon on this golf course. Henrik Stenson won putting on a ball striking show. He ended up hitting 56 greens in regulation that week out of 72. That was by far the best in the field. You look at what Scotty Sheffler is doing this season. He leads the tour by far in greens in regulation. Everything it takes to play well on this golf course is what Scotty Sheffler does the best. And today was the most Scotty Sheffler rounds. There was 2 bogeys, 3 birdies, not a lot of excitement, not a lot of flash, but a lot of substance.
Well, speaking of guys who've struggled with ball striking, Rex, the Justin Thomas has had his moments, right? And we all know he's a 2-time major winner. We all know he can be among the best players on the planet. We've also seen him in recent years have some really tough rounds in major championships. He was the best of the morning group today at -3. Is that a significant turnaround in his fortunes, Rex, or are you going to have to see more?
I do have to see more, and based only on what happened last week at the Scottish Open. I was there. I interviewed him on Thursday after he shot at 62, and there was an undertone that he wasn't entirely comfortable, that 62 wasn't the sum of its parts. He didn't feel like that he probably played as well as the score suggested. I love the fact that he was asked today that it was today a better round, a 68, compared to the 62 on Thursday last week, and he said 100%. The ball striking is back. My colleague Ryan Lavner on the podcast with me pointed out a really good stat or a really good take that of all the top players in the game right now, JT is probably most prepared to play in links golf. He can flight the ball better than anyone else. He likes to move it in both directions. His record in this event, I believe he has his best finish is a tie for 11th, is not very good, and that's kind of baffling to me. I think what we saw today is an indication of what he's capable of.
Rex, we appreciate you joining us. Stay dry, stay warm, and enjoy the final 3 rounds of the year's final major.
Appreciate it. Talk to you guys soon.
We have it. Rex Hoggard joining us from Royal Troon as the Open Championship is, again, it's underway. The first round is just wrapping up, even though it is now 9:41 in Scotland. That's how much daylight. Actually, I think they've just now. I'm trying to see if there's anyone else on the course.
It looks pretty dark. Like I have it on in the background here. It looks pretty dark. But you know what? I think it's good for Rex to give us a little bit of context there as far as just how windy it is and just how hard the conditions are, because it's so easy to pull up the leaderboard and see, John Rahm at 2 over, or you go down the list and you can see I don't know, Patrick Cantley's 2 over. Like there's a lot of good names that are over par. But I guess that's not a bad score on a day like today. Like the conditions must have been really, really hard.
Oh, it looked brutal out there. I mean, you had the sideways wind. I think it was gusting past 25 miles an hour at times, and you had it was chilly. Like a lot of the fans just looked miserable out there, wearing their ponchos, trying to fend off the elements with umbrellas and a lot of layers. Like I don't think it got past 14, 15 Celsius. Plus, it was damp. It didn't feel much like summer, I'm sure, to the American guys over there, which, it doesn't surprise you that a lot of to your point, Mark, a lot of the European guys, Shane Lowry, a former Open champion who grew up in Ireland, it doesn't surprise you that those guys were thriving while plenty of hot weather players were not.
Yeah, 6 of the top 10 players right now are from Europe, and one of those top 10 players is also a Canadian in Mackenzie Hughes. So the Open Championship continuing. It is summer in Scotland. Toques, rain jackets, bring it all. Multi-layers are necessary. Still to come, we'll get to baseball and the Blue Jays kicking off a series with the Tigers. Ryan Spilborough will be on the call on Apple TV for that opener on Friday. He's going to join us for the 5 o'clock hour. Coming up next, an IndyCar driver with the most Toronto comment of all Toronto comments. You'll hear that coming up. OverDrive, TSN 1050, the TSN app, and also on TSN 4. OverDrive continuing, TSN 1050, the TSN app. We're up on TSN 4. It's Mark Rowe in for Brian Hayes this week alongside Dave Feschuk from the Toronto Star. Frankie Corrado also joining us from the lovely Corrado studios. You look good, my friend.
Thank you, guys. It's nice to be on with you, Dave. I think this is the first show we've done all summer, so nice to be chatting with you.
Hey, and by the way, happy anniversary, Frankie. I know it's a big night for you and the missus. Big plans after the show, I'm assuming?
Not going anywhere. Just, we're kind of tied down to the house. So we don't really do, like, I don't know what you guys do, but we don't do, like, the gift exchange thing anymore. Like, it just seems like, I don't know, it seems wasteful at this point. So we do usually, like, a nice dinner. Tonight, nice dinner will be at home. So, I don't know, we're off the air at 6:55, 6:57. I'll have the barbecue going, and I got a couple rib steaks ready to go sitting in the kitchen. So, yeah, that's the plan, little home-cooked meal.
Well, one of the many advantages you have in staying in your home studio there, on top of the fact that you have your anniversary night and you want to make sure that you're there in time, but you didn't have to drive into work. And as we know, traffic can be a little dicey sometimes in this city, especially when we had a monsoon earlier this week. And,
yes.
Roads are shut down. And at the best of times, it's not great. You got construction. Well, the Ontario Honda Dealers Indy Toronto is happening this weekend. Scott Dixon's going to join us a little bit later in the show. But Lockie Hughes, who's an Australian driver, he was part of the media event that they had for the drivers to kick off the race this weekend. And here's what he had to say about dealing with the city's traffic.
I'm just super happy to be here in Toronto. I got stuck in traffic as well, so actually rented a bike to get here in time and then ran the rest of the way. So it's cool just to be outside, like along the water there. It reminds me a little of back home in Australia. So it's just really nice people outdoors playing tennis. And there's Smarties here, so at that hotel we got Smarties, so I feel right at home.
Got the Smarties. He's comparing the city to Australia, which is maybe the nicest thing that depends on what part of Australia we're talking about. But we obviously our mind goes to the nice beaches and beautiful scenery, but. Like, as someone who has to deal with deadlines all the time, have you ever had to run out of an Uber or a cab and just say, it's going to be faster if I just run to my destination and get my story in on time? Because that's essentially what he did.
I mean, in this town, like, how many times have we seen this, though? Like, I think it was a couple of seasons ago, there was video of Masai Ujiri just getting out of a car on Lakeshore and just saying, screw it, I'm walking to Scotiabank Arena. I'm not sitting in this anymore. Because that corner, Frankie, that corner, Lakeshore and Bay down there.
Man. Lakeshore and Bay, I have nightmares trying to make that left turn from Bay onto Lakeshore. And the worst part, like, this is, first world problems because I'm going underground parking, at Scotiabank Arena. But when you make the left, you still have to get over 2 lanes to get into the parking garage, and seemingly no one wants to let you in because they think you're trying to take their spot as they try and get onto the ramp for the gardener. Right. So it's like you put your nose of your car in, you hope that the person coming respects that and doesn't hit your car, and then you just try and bully your way in. I still have PTSD from that stupid left turn. But didn't we just see, like, who was it? Was it Niall Horan?
Yeah.
He was playing a concert here in Toronto, and I guess he was driving down to the stadium to, I don't know if it was to do sound check or to actually get to the show, but he had to abandon his car on Lakeshore and walk the rest of the way, and he actually walked down the tunnel, the one that I'm talking about, where you would park at Scotiabank Arena. So this is an epidemic in our city. Like, this is happening. Visitors don't understand the traffic here, and they have to abandon their cars on Lakeshore. What is going on around here?
Well, it's no longer our traffic is as bad as LA. I feel like we've surpassed LA.
It's worse.
It's worse.
It's worse.
Now, how many of the players drove to the rink compared to taking the TTC or some other transportation?
I think so. When I played for the team, pretty much everyone drove. I know Kadri, he had a condo that was right on the subway line, so I think he started taking it at one point. Mm-hmm. And there was a few guys that lived within walking distance of Scotiabank Arena, so like those guys would walk. But like, I'll give you an example of a couple things. So the first year I played for the team was 15-16. Mm-hmm. I lived right by the Weston Harbor Castle there, and it would take me 12 minutes to get to the MasterCard Center, which is what it was called at the time, the practice arena. Mm-hmm. The next year, I came back. I actually lived closer. I lived at I lived at Bremner and Spadina, and it was taking me 22 minutes to get there. So, like, something was going on with the Gardner. There was more people driving down there. It was like in 1 year, it got different. Now the Gardner is like down to 2 lanes or something. It's a complete disaster. And you know what? Like, I was down on University the other day. I don't want to make this a bike lane issue, but I was down on University, and I'm like, not moving. Why am I not moving? I look over. It's like, oh, there's a brand new bike lane. So, like, traffic is just not going anywhere fast in this city.
No, it's not. It's a bit of an embarrassment. It really is, and it's getting tougher to live here. But it's good that the visitors to our town, the famous visitors, the race car drivers and the rock stars, are dealing with it too. It's not just the regular people, Frankie. It's the royalty of the sports and entertainment business that are going through it.
We have one
too.
equalizer, right? We have one equalizer in life. You know, celebrities have to sit in traffic just like us, unless they're taking a chopper. But
that's probably coming, right? Wait until the Raptors guys that are all making $50 million just say screw it. I'm taking we got to get a helipad on top of Scotiabank Arena to accommodate the NBA players who don't want to drive with the plebes.
You're probably right. All it's going to take is like one big UFA signing for the Raptors to say, like, I need the helipad or I'm not coming.
Well, that's what Kobe. Happen. I shouldn't even say this because it brings up a sad moment.
Yeah.
But Kobe Bryant, obviously, he was commuting to the Staples Center, or what used to be called the Staples Center in LA. Speaking of traffic, he would often commute to games via helicopter. We know, obviously, he met his death in a helicopter, unfortunately. But it's coming, right? Like, someone's going to think of it. Like,
well, I would see it at the U.S. Open sometimes, like helicopters, because of the A-listers that go to that event and
like you're an A-lister.
The media shuttle. Not exactly as efficient as a helicopter, as your bus tries to weave in and out of Queens, New York. But the second half unofficially of the baseball season will get going on Friday. The Blue Jays begin their series against the Tigers. Ryan Spilberow's former player, but now broadcaster with MLB Network Radio and also the MLB on Apple TV, will join us to kick off the 5 o'clock hours. OverDrive continues on TSN 1050, the TSN app, and on TSN 4.